And with that, let's keep this energy going for Lauren Kelliker.
The breed-specific dog rescue I was vice president of was all volunteer. So the payoff was never a paycheck. Instead, what kept me going was saving dogs from dire situations, getting them healthy, and moving them into, and seeing them adopted into loving homes. In 2013, we were notified of a Doberman in a shelter in North Carolina. Back then, most dogs in southern shelters didn't make it out alive due to high euthanasia rates. But we had an approved adopter waiting for this dog, a young, well-mannered Doberman with those perky cropped ears. So if he had a home if we could just get him to Chicago. So Armani needed a complicated transport across the country. So I was voluntold to organize it. Back then, there was a network of volunteers dedicated to moving Dobermans north. So I optimistically submitted a request to cover the 1,000 miles from the coast of North Carolina to Chicago in January. We had drivers for the beginning and ending legs, but there were too many gaps in the middle remaining. Armani's time was running out, so I reached out to the network of some small plane pilots. They specialized in moving dogs from high kill areas to where they had a chance to get adopted, but they had a limit of 500 miles. So I begged to get Armani flown to safety. Amazingly, one pilot offered to cover the whole trip, a young guy named Bill who loved to fly dogs to their rescue. So that coming Saturday, the weather looked clear for January. So Bill and Armani planed up and flew northwest. But somewhere over Kentucky, they hit a sudden storm and decided it would be safest to land and stay in a hotel and resume the flight the next morning. But on Sunday, the weather between us was worse. With no notice, we could not get someone to risk it driving on the road, so Armani and Bill decided it was safest to turn around and head back to North Carolina. But we would try again the next weekend. So the following Saturday, the weather looked crystal clear, but there was a little wind. So Bill and Armani headed back this way, and they were scheduled to land at the small suburban airport at 6 p.m. Along the way, Bill would update me. He would descend to 10,000 feet to get a cell signal, and he would call me from the plane. I felt like his co-pilot as he talked to me from the air. At 3 o'clock, he said, "Yeah, the winds from the west are still really strong, so there's no storms ahead, though. I'm not going to make it by 6, so let's call it 9. I had some friends and fellow rescue volunteers who lived right by that airport, so we went around and made a care package of Chicago comfort foods as a thank you. So we went to Lou Malnati's and got deep dish pizzas and Portillo's and got hot dogs and fries. 7 o'clock, Bill called again and said the winds from the west were still an issue, so he extended his ETA another hour. Then he called twice more with similar adjustments. And finally, Bill called and conceded that he just could not fly west anymore, but he could fly north. "How soon could you be in South Bend?" he asked. Luckily, my friends were up for a late-night rescue road trip and offered to drive. So at midnight, with the wind at our backs, we hit the road. We made great time and got to South Bend in just under 2 hours. So we found Bill and Armani waking up from a nap at the airport, and we each gave him a long, relieved hug. And Armani jumped up to give us hugs too. Bill was more than happy to eat the now cold hot dogs, and Armani scarfed down a few soggy fries. So around 3 a.m., we packed Armani up in the car, and we headed back home. Took us about 2.5 hours this time. Bill safely made it back to North Carolina, and Armani moved into a foster home. He was a little thin, so the foster mom spent the next 2 weeks putting some weight on him so he could get neutered. But he got neutered, and he was going to be ready to be adopted as soon as he healed up. But the day after his surgery, his experienced foster mom realized that he wasn't bouncing back from surgery like normal. She told the medical coordinator that his gums were pale and he was lethargic. So he went to the vet for blood work, and his liver and kidney values were all over the place. So the vet wanted to hospitalize him overnight with fluids and medication, but he was confident that he'd pull through in the morning. But in the morning, our boy was dead. His stiff body was yellow from liver failure. The vet was shocked, and we were all devastated. In the hundreds of times I've cried over a rescue dog, Armani's death was one of the hardest. All of that work for worse than nothing. I could never tell Bill what happened. I wanted to save him from the pain of losing him after everything we all did to try to save him. I stayed on as vice president for another 5 years, and there were more than enough sleepless nights, crazy adventures, and heartbreaking losses. But I never organized another long-distance transport again. Thank you.